Alright, episode 21 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. I'm recording this on August 21st, 2022. Bit of a delay on this episode. This weekend has been quite a test of faith. Whatever faith that may be is completely in the eye of the beholder, whether it is a religious faith or a personal faith or faith to someone else. It is all subjective, but the test of patience and faith has been definitely put up to task. So this may be a shorter episode because finding the time to record this has been quite tricky. But I didn't want to miss a weekend. I have yet to. But like I said, this might be a shorter one because I need to get this out and then get back to some other things. But it's definitely been a test this weekend of sticking through. And last night I decided to revisit one of my favorite films, which is from 2006. I'm not going to talk too in depth about it, but just briefly mention it. I kind of want to talk about the power of film. And I went ahead and I rewatched the sixth Rocky film, titled Rocky Balboa, when Stallone was making sequels all these years later and naming them films like Rocky Balboa and John Rambo, which got turned into Rambo. And I get the idea to not have it be Rocky 6 or Rambo 4, because if you're coming back after all this time, a general audience would probably see the title and go, oh, I didn't see the other Rockies, so therefore I can't see this one. But much like Rambo, the fourth one, and Rocky 6, these are films you can jump into without having seen the previous films, although you should see the previous films of both Rocky and Rambo. This was a very, I hadn't seen this in a little while, and just rewatching this definitely, it was a very comforting film. There's a lot of themes going on in this film that I've been dealing with, and I guess having that kind of another character put these kind of feelings into words and putting things into perspective of time and of loss and of moving forward is definitely, it's just watching it this time, I got a completely different and unique perspective that I didn't get the last time I saw it. And so, and I've seen this film probably 6 or 7 times now. I mean, maybe one day I'll do a whole big retrospective on the Rocky films, because they're a franchise that mean quite a lot to me. But this film especially, I think it's probably my favorite of the Rocky sequels, even though I like all of them for different reasons. But this one feels the closest to a proper follow-up to the first film, in so that it doesn't ignore the sequels, but it's primarily, they don't really touch on it a whole lot on 2 through 5, at least nothing that comes to mind in terms of big references. So Rocky Balboa, man, yeah, it's just a terrific film. I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot, but I just wanted to mention it in terms of just a film that going back to after all this time, and it really just kind of packing a punch, no pun intended, that I didn't quite get the last time. But, so I guess today I'll talk about another popular franchise, of which I guess watched the last one yesterday, at least the last one in the main series. So I think everybody's probably seen Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, the seminal 1967 or 8 film. I'm blanking on the year. Oh, look at that. I was completely off. 1960. Well, I was 8 years off, so look at that. Anyways, it's a film that has been so steeped in pop culture that even if you haven't seen it, I think everybody knows certain moments and lines, and it's been parodied, it's been ripped off, it's been influenced a bunch. It's a seminal film, a seminal horror film, and a seminal film in the 60s, and a seminal film just of all time. And I'd never seen any of the sequels. Psycho 2 came out in 83. So you have about a 23-year gap. And this is after Hitchcock had died. This was directed by Richard Franklin, written by Tom Holland, and returns Anthony Perkins. And this one I knew had gotten some more attention, that people were talking about it being one of the better, being actually a pretty solid film. And I'm not going to really talk about this one too much. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised how well done this was. I don't think it's great. I think it definitely stumbles in the third act, and the reveal is a bit nonsensical. Well, it's not that it's not nonsensical. It's a bit convoluted, a bit elaborate for what we're doing here. When the full reveal happens, it kind of had me scratching my head a bit much. But overall, it's a good film. All the cast does well, and it's a surprisingly solid. Now, Psycho 3 and 4 I knew were not very well received. So I went ahead and I watched Psycho 3 and 4. And ironically, the day that I watched Psycho 3, I had a recommendation pop up it was a video from, I believe it was JoeBlow.com, saying that Psycho 3 was an underrated sequel, and it's pretty wild, man. I didn't really know what to expect from this one. I knew some of the stuff with Jeff Fahey and his underwear, but this is a pretty wild film, directed by Anthony Perkins, one of two films he's directed, and it's strange because where Psycho 2 is in '83. And doesn't really feel much of an 80s film. It feels just like more of a just a general kind of sequel. This film feels a lot more as if it's aware that it's an 80s film. There's a lot of there's some nudity in this one, which I don't know if there was any nudity in Psycho 2. They have some of the characters who feel like they've come out of a Friday the 13th film. Anthony Perkins seems to get lost in the film. He seems like at times you wonder where he's at. He's like in the background, or he's just lost in the shuffle. Because Jeff Fahey, he's acting off the wall in this one. He's acting pretty wild. The kills in this are pretty gnarly. There's not a whole lot of them, but they're pretty well done. There's one in a telephone booth that is pretty brutal, that I was surprised. I think there's a bit of a lack of kills. I don't think there's a whole lot, but my immediate reaction after I finished the film was I was pretty ambivalent on it. You have to kind of look at a film like this in two ways. I mean, I'm looking at this as its own film. I mean, I know it's Psycho 3, but the idea of this having any kind of connection to the Hitchcock's film or the second film is like, it's like it doesn't even feel like it's in the same universe. Like, you have the location, sure, and you have the same character, but it feels like it just doesn't even feel like it's related. At least I didn't think so. But as its own film, I mean, it's really not even a slasher either. It doesn't feel like one. There's not enough kills in it. It's strange. It's like a weird kind of offbeat film that it is kind of interesting to see the progression of the Psycho films to this point, where this feels kind of like the black sheep of the series. It's just something about it, man. It just feels so distant from the other films that I don't know, man. It's a weird film, but it's kind of cool at the same time. I think I might actually kind of like the film. It's just pretty out there. It's pretty wild, and I think if you watch the four films back to back, it's pretty interesting to see the evolution of on-screen sexuality and violence, how it's done a lot more tastefully in Hitchcock's film, but also at the same time due to probably restrictions of what you could show on screen. I mean, you don't see any nudity or stab wounds in the 1960 film, but then by now you're getting pretty gnarly slicings and nudity and all this stuff. It's just pretty interesting. So I think I kind of like Psycho 3. I really don't know. And then Psycho 4 is something else altogether. It was I think straight to Showtime film, directed by Mick Garris, who I think also directed Sleepwalkers. I don't know. I think he did. I don't know why. I think I'm thinking of Sleepwalkers because I have a VHS tape in the corner right there. Um, oh, okay. And he also directed, he actually, also directed Critters 2, which I like a lot. So he's somebody who I always hear about on like podcasts and stuff. People bring him up, but I don't think he's done a lot of feature films, a lot of TV. But I am a big fan of Critters too, so I guess he's got that going for him. But yeah, Psycho 4, it feels this one really feels out there. It's an interesting idea of having it be a prequel. You have Norman calling into a radio station. They were talking about what's it called when people kill their moms. It's like a Mac tree something. But he's calling up. I don't even remember why he was calling up. And then we have a flashback to Norman as a child and his mom, played by Olivia Hussey, playing Norma Bates, and Henry Thomas playing a young Norman who looks a lot actually like Anthony Perkins, like now, which is kind of strange. God, I don't know what's going on in this film. Olivia Hussey is an actor who I like a lot, but she is really, I don't know what she's doing in the performance here. It's very big, very theatrical, and I don't know if that, I would imagine that it's just her not being directed very well. I really don't know. But the film as well, has some blood, has some nudity, which I knew was made for TV, but then when the nudity happened, I was like, okay, this had to be for like Showtime or HBO or something, and yeah, it was for Showtime. And for the most part, it feels like it feels like kind of lower budgeted. It's like, okay, they probably had a less of a budget to do, some stuff, but then it's weird because then the third act goes really big. Like, the third act, it was like they spent all the money in the third act because next when you have this big, elaborate set piece, and I was just surprised. For one, it feels like it feels like they probably, like that could have been the film. Like, I don't really, like, I know they want to have each of the Psycho films, they try to do more and more about Norman's backstory. But here, it's like they wanted to do both. Like, they had Anthony Perkins, and they also wanted to do this backstory. But it wasn't enough to just have him call in and have this build up. Because when that story's over, you think, okay, the film is over now. But then you realize you have another half hour left. And so you have another subplot going on, and they try to end it in a way that is like, I don't know, man. They try to end it in a way where they try to be like, well, it'll all work out and everything's okay, and it's just kind of bizarre with the past 3 films that we've seen. The way they end it like this, it's really something else. I don't think it's very good. I think at least Psycho 3 has that weird kind of quality to it that it's enjoyable, but it's very dumb. Whereas this film is just kind of dumb. It's pretty uninteresting, pretty never boring, but the shifts, the pacing shifts really kind of throw me off, and the acting especially, it feels really all over the place. Like, I don't really know what tone they're going for in this. It's very big, and even Anthony Perkins feels very distanced from the character. It feels closer to Norman than the third film, but at the same time, it still feels like it's not quite the same character. And again, talking about with Psycho 3, you have to look at this as kind of its own thing. I really have trouble connecting this to the Hitchcock film as some sort of continuity. I look at this as just closer to maybe the first 2 could be their own thing, and then 3 and 4 could be their own thing, because the idea of this being 4 films in the same story is just very difficult. But Psycho 4, I don't think I'd recommend it, but if you've already seen the other ones, you might as well just go for this one, I guess. I had a VHS of this. Weirdly enough, the 2 McGarris films I have are both on VHS. Well, besides Critters 2, which I have the Blu-ray of. But I'm looking over, I have Sleepwalkers over there and Psycho 4. And I don't even buy VHS, so I don't even know why I have these. And I know there was the Bates Motel TV movie from '87, which I've never seen. And then, of course, there was the recent Bates Motel TV show that when I was watching TV, I had seen the first 2 seasons of, and it was actually not bad. It's a prequel as well, but what I like about it is that they really aren't too concerned with continuity. They're really just kind of doing their own story. It's because the continuity is not really there. I think I remember the first episode, he had like an iPod or something, and It's supposed to take place in the 40s, I would assume. I mean, if we're going by the timeline, I mean, it's yeah, I don't know. And oh, of course, can't forget the '98 remake directed by Gus Van Sant. Um, it's weird because the argument that I've heard of it not being very good is that it's just a complete total remake of the 1960 film, and it is with some changes. It's weird because it's ultimately a pointless film. I mean, if you're just doing the script, then it's an interesting experiment, but it's hard to kind of gauge at it from a subjective viewpoint. It's really kind of impossible to look at this as its own film. So on one hand, you can say that this is one of the worst remakes because it just does the same thing. But then on the other hand, somebody mentioned once that they didn't understand how it was one of the worst if it was the same film. I really have no idea. It's a weird film. It's an interesting experiment. I think it's kind of miscast. I don't think Vince Vaughn's as bad as people have said that he is. I definitely don't think he's like awful. I just think he's miscast. Anne Heche, R.I.P., is a fine replacement for Janet Leigh, and I don't even remember Robert Forster in the film. Jeez, I've seen it once. I didn't rewatch it for the '98 top 10 because I knew it was going to make the list. But it's a weird experiment, and it's weird because I don't know. Gus Van Sant's like one of my favorite filmmakers. He's just, I think, an incredible director. Has made a couple of my favorite films, but I don't know what was going on with this one. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a strange film, but check it out as sort of like an experiment. But that's where I'm going to end it, guys. I know this one was a shorter episode. It's been a busy weekend, for sure. It's definitely been a weekend of testing and faith and patience, but ultimately sticking through, no matter how hard it might be. So I just hope that you all are using your time wisely and doing what it is you want to do, because we never know what can happen tomorrow or in an hour or 5 minutes or anything like that. It's nothing's certain in this world, but we're here, we're alive at this time, and all we can do is just push forward, no matter how hard that might be. But that's all I got. So I'll be back next week, and we will take it from there. So thank you guys for sticking through. 21 episodes up to this point, and I will be back. So all the best.